Good evening. Welcome to the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild monthly membership meeting. I'm Craig Arnold here at the Guild with a lovely studio audience. Yeah. Alrighty. Tonight, I'd like to welcome any new members or first-time visitors to the Guild. If you would stand up, please be recognized. We have one. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your being here. Oh, and another one over here. Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate your being here. Tonight we are on YouTube Live. Hello at home. I think my wife might even be watching tonight. But there's about a 15-30 second delay-ish on what we say here when it shows up there. And so we are asking for questions from the home audience. If you have a question for any of us or for our guest speaker tonight, just type it in the comments and Chris will read it out and we'll all be able to hear it then. And that's another reminder, if you do have a question tonight from the studio audience, find one of the people with a microphone, and that way the folks at home can hear you. We hope to have a much larger audience because our guest speaker tonight has published that he will be on our YouTube live event, and so we expect a much bigger audience than usual. So, and if you like what you see, subscribe, ring the bell at home. Let's see, want to move on to memorials. Recently, Jerry Jennings passed away. His daughter, Pat Berger, and son-in-law, Harland, are also members of the Guild, and they contacted us asking how they could honor Jerry with a remembrance for him. I remember the first time I came to a meeting, I met Jerry, and I thought, boy, this guy is bigger than life. And he was really a nice guy, so I will miss him. So, also, Jack Mitchell passed away. How long ago has that been? Just about a month in June. So I remember seeing Jack at some of the meetings that are around the shop. So he's also a very helpful guy, and he will also be missed by many of us here at the Guild. Going on into any of the reports, let's see. Nobody wants to say anything. I will tell you that our assets director back there, Chuck, wave your hand. Chuck's there in the back hiding behind a huge bag of dowels. They are 2 inches long and 3/8 inch diameter. Maybe they're 2 inches in diameter, 3/8 long. That's. But he's got. Go back there and he'll give you a cup full of those. And also there is still the Steel City drill press sitting back there. Make Chuck an offer. He's willing to talk turkey, so we'd like to get rid of that thing. And it runs. So, let's see. In communications, I think we have some of the communications people watching at home, but they will remind you that we do have our Facebook page is at KCWWG. We have a Facebook group, which is the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild group. They're on the screen, you can see those. We also have an Instagram, Kansas City Woodworkers Guild, and Twitter at KCW Guild. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. We also have a new podcast. Our written newsletter is Woodwards. Kevin Thomas hosts Woodwards, the podcast. Look, we've got 5, about every 2 weeks we try to put one out. There's 5 of them out there now. And so I've watched all of those, and they've been pretty entertaining. I think the best one was Cal. He's done a lot of great things in woodworking, so you have to watch that. If you'd like to write an article for our newsletter, Ron Haw is our newsletter editor. Send him any article that you have written to newsletter@kcwg.org. He will be glad to take that. If you have any issues with the website, Mark Crawley is our webmaster and does an excellent job at maintaining our website. Our librarian, Don Steele, come on up, Don. Grab a microphone.
magazines on display that have articles by Matt Kenney, and we'll leave them out on display in the library until the class is over. And so feel free to take a look at some of those, and then they'll be for sale next week or sometime thereafter. Also, magazines are also for sale today. Thank you.
How much are they?
$5 for $1.
5 for $1. That's a deal at twice the price. Alrighty. Events. Chris McCauley, he's back behind the control panel back there. He's going to come up and talk about Santa's Workshop. Got a video to show.
Coming up in November.
Yes. Well, my alter ego, if you haven't figured out, is St. Nicholas, Father Christmas. And here at the Guild, we're going to have a holiday sale and visit with Father Christmas. The plan is when they come in the door, they'll get a block of wood. They're going to go to 6 different stations to process that wood into a small toy truck. Then they will come into the hand tool room. In the hand tool room, they'll actually get to visit with Santa. They'll get to build with Santa and with some of his elves. And the wood turners are joining us, and they're going to have small turned tops that will drill a hole in the middle of their truck. The top will go in there, so they actually get 2 gifts in one. And then as they come out of the hand tool room, our general meeting area will be set up with individual sale tables. Our members and friends will be able to sell items they have handmade. And it's going to be 2 weeks before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So this is a great opportunity to come get the stuff that is special, that is handmade, and it's going to be a very special event. For those in the Kansas City area, we will be doing this. We hope to have Fox 4 on board. They're going to help us with some promotion, and we will be doing this the weekend before Thanksgiving.
They'll
The
be
20th,
right up,
I think it is.
they're right up the hill from us. So
Yes.
hopefully we can get them down here to enjoy the festivities. So I take it Santa will be making an appearance.
Santa will be here in all his glory. The beard and the hair turn white about that time, and it's a great time. I love dealing with the kids. I love the looks on their faces as I get to tell them some stories, and I get to talk to them.
Okay, so that is going to be on the Saturday and Sunday, November 20th and 21st. We're getting some more details together on if you're interested in having a booth, what all that's going to entail, but that way you can sell some of your items. So start working on projects now to get things together. Also, if you have kids or grandkids or anyone, we'll get some information out probably middle of October to start passing that information out to start advertising a little bit better. Between now and then, L&K Hardwoods, they are one of our sponsors. They were back here in, I want to say January, did our presentation. They were very impressed with our shop and immediately asked how they could help us out, and they wanted to become a sponsor. So if you haven't been out there, he has a bandsaw mill that he mills everything up. He also has a vacuum press or vacuum kiln to dry everything. They are going to be doing a toy drive this year. So on October 9th, we're arranging a guild tour of his shop. We'll meet here at 10 o'clock and head towards there to their shop out in Independence. We ask you please bring an unwrapped gift for their toy drive, or any cash donations will be going towards those toys as well. A unwrapped gift or cash donation for the toy drive will provide you lunch for that day. Larry and Cammy have said they're going to be providing lunch for everyone, and they're really looking forward to it. You can take a look at the mill. He's going to try to do a demo, and anything that he cuts up, you can pick out your slab right there. He'll throw it in the kiln, dry it. You can pick it up 2 weeks later, or bring your truck with you, and anything he already has dried, ready to go, that's not currently marked, is available for sale.
Thank you. You may have seen in the video, initially Mike said it was 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. It's actually 1 week before Thanksgiving on the Saturday and Sunday before. In membership, Jim Berard just gave me brand new numbers tonight. We're at 856 members. Woohoo! Let's see, Matt. There he is.
Yeah, sorry for being a little bit late. I got visitors in from Stuttgart. So we just finished supper, and I ran up here real quick. Whew, with cookies that will satisfy even Gary. No more little bitty cookies, Gary. The big cookies, the serious ones. And soda and water is icing down. I don't think I actually have a program for October yet. Now that I think about it. Now I did go to the Woodturners meeting Monday night, and they did Christmas ornaments. And all they did was haul out a lathe here. It's very quiet. I sat right there, didn't get any chips on me. I've asked one of the guys if he would come and give a demonstration of turning Christmas ornaments. That's a possibility. So if you got any other ideas, just let me know. Oh, for tonight's program, Matt Kenney, I don't know if you know about it, but there's also a group called, it's an international group called Domestica. And Matt Kenney is also very knowledgeable, very experienced in doing Kumiko. And for not a very large price, you can get a lifetime program where you can learn, where he actually will demonstrate how to do Kumiko. So besides having him here tonight to do, boxes, you could also ask him tonight about Kumiko possibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I'll sit back down now. Bench is too tall. Bench is too short. All righty. Let's see. Mike Jones not here for safety. Roughed already. They've trained a lot of people. For new members, if you do want to get trained and in the shop, the Roughed Already class is a great way to get a brush up on any of the tools, and that gets you qualified to get your green name badge for shop privileges. So look into that. Sponsorship. Dwayne Miller wants to remind us to use Amazon Smile when we shop on Amazon. Half of 1% comes back to the guild as a donation from Amazon. It does not raise your price. So I think we've got $200 or $300 from them since we've started in the program. So every little bit helps. Norm Carpenters, our director of training, when he come up, he'll get on the orange microphone. Yep, make you stand up.
Hey everybody, training's going pretty well. It's great to have everybody back in the shop. Classes are selling out pretty quickly. We do have a couple of coming up that are still have some spots in them. The November toy class has about 6 openings in it, and the December one I think has 2 remaining.
Might have it. November was 2.
No, I think it's the other way around. Yeah. Anyway, it's the way I just said it. Yeah. Anyway, there's some places open in the toy class. It's a lot of fun. It's a day of building toys, similar to what the kids will be doing with Santa, but more hands-on, and you'll be actually working the machines and getting some leverage that way. So it's good toys to hand out. You end up the day with 3 trucks and a complete wooden train set when we're done. So it's nice from that perspective, because if you have some people that you'd like to gift, those are great gifts to hand. My grandson still has his that his mom put up on a shelf someplace and won't let him touch it. Yeah, I know. There's also we also have a quail carving class coming up with Dan Robideau, and there's 2 spots open for that, so you want to get into that when you can. We'll be looking at adding some more classes. I think Craig says he's going to be doing another finishing class sometime this fall, so that'll be up on the system. And of course, we'll be announcing the basic and intermediate woodworking classes for next year around the December time frame, so keep an eye out for that when the communications team puts them out.
When are the classes announced?
When?
Yes.
Sometime in December.
No, on Tuesday nights.
Oh yeah, Tuesday nights. Typically, we are announcing classes Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. They go up, and the email goes out, and they become live, and you can sign up for them. On occasion, if I get behind schedule, we might throw one out earlier, just because I want to make sure people get a chance to sign up if it's happening quickly. I also wanted to take a minute to point out, if you have not yet seen it, the September issue of Popular Woodworking has an article in it by Keenan Orhan. Keenan's a member here at the Guild. In fact, I believe he's a foreman on our team. And he wrote an article on building a shaker-inspired sewing cabinet. And you can see pictures of him working on it and the parts and like that right there in the hand tool room. He did it with all hand tools, just because he, that's his therapy system. And so that article's out there now. Bring your magazine in, give him a sign it when you see him here at the Guild sometime. I asked him about teaching a class. He's not sure he's at that point yet, but he's close. And he gives a lot of credit to Dave Kratz for helping him with that design. So,
Well, he can teach. If I can teach, anybody can teach. Right?
There you go.
Thanks, Norm. Alrighty, coming up also, the skill builders. We have the first Saturday of every month. There's a skill builder, just a single topic, no green card required. You just gather around the workbench. This in the October 2nd, I'll be boring you with finishing application techniques. Ooh, I know, settle down. Also, let's see, in upcoming, the special interest groups, the SIGs, the Woodcarver SIG. Dan, you want to come up and talk about what's going on in the Woodcarver SIG? It meets the fourth Tuesday of the month in classroom number 2 from 6 to 9 p.m.
Actually, it's 6 to 8. Yeah. But anyway, the woodcarvers have a bunch of tools, power tools, carving tools, and pyrography tools that are available now, and we'll be using those in every meeting. There'll be somebody there to instruct about traditional carving and then power carving and also pyrography. And so that's available to anybody, and everybody is welcome.
Is there a topic for upcoming?
We have a topic, but we haven't finalized it.
Thank you much. Gary Melke or Ed Stewart, you want to talk about the CNC SIG? We're going to let Ed come up from behind the camera. He's going to be on microphone orange.
My name's Ed. We've installed the new Maverick Pro. It's a 3x5 horizontal table. Also has a turning center as well as a vertical table on it. Next week I will be going out to Utah for 2 days of intensive training. Once I return, Gary and I will start orientation to the new CNC. So if you're already qualified on our Legacy Explorer, it's going to be just kind of a little continuing education. If not, we'll have a little program to get you up and going on the machine. The controller for this new machine is different than the Mach 3 controller that we've been using on the Explorer, and so there is some learning to be done, but I'm excited about it. I think there's a lot of possibilities, and I'm anxious to see what people can turn out from this new piece of equipment that was very generously donated to the Guild. So, thank you.
And that also has a rotary device in it?
Yes.
And
It has a turning center so that you can do up to a 10-inch square block going into the machine, and up to 5 feet long.
wow.
So
You
can
also
make-
do vertical,
Yes. Yes.
easier.
And I hope by the next meeting to have some examples to show people of what the machine can do. So,
Great. Thank you very much. Look forward to that. One of our members, I can't think of his name now, Mike Resch, he wrote the new software for this machine, and in lieu of payment, he asked Legacy to donate this machine to the Guild. Wow. it's pretty generous on his part. So, Mike, if you're at home watching, thank you. And Bob Detweiler's also got a lot of the upgrades done to this machine that don't get done at Legacy, even though they make a great machine. Bob did some upgrades on that as well. So, Bob, thank you very much. If you're watching at home, we appreciate you. Let's see. The Hand Tool SIG meets the fourth Sunday of the month from 2 to 4. They will be talking about mortise and tenon joints, and Rob Young is the coordinator, leader of that group. He's in the back next to Chuck, behind the bag of dowels. The Power Tool SIG is the first Sunday of the month from 3 to 5. Is there a topic for this month, Chuck? No topic this month. So he will answer all your questions about how to set up your power tools at home. And the Scroll Saw SIG meets on the second Wednesday of the month in classroom number 2 at 7 o'clock. And John Tegler helps coordinate that group. He's going to come up and say a few words.
John Tegler is my name, and I head up the Scroll Saw Special Interest Group, and we meet on the second Wednesday of the month, and right back here.
No, over there.
What's that room
right,
called?
Right there, classroom number 2.
No.
The library.
Oh. We meet in the library, unless other fancy hot dog people are taking over the library, then we are relegated to classroom 2. Also, the scroll saw, if anybody's interested in scrolling, on Saturday mornings, George Rex Road is typically in here running a scroll saw, making puzzles, wooden puzzles. So if anybody is curious on how to scroll saw or what scroll sawing looks like, and you can wander in there most Saturday mornings. And hopefully, as time goes along and the volume starts to pick up, I hope to start introduction to scroll sawing. That's it.
Will you do Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas items this year?
There won't be any classes on that,
classes, okay.
although I hope to bring to the monthly meeting some samples of. That's what I want to bring, a show and tell. Next month will be some Halloween scroll saw ornaments. Okay?
All right. Thank you very much. All righty. Our next meeting is October 20th, which is the third Wednesday of the month. And we're going to start show and tell now. Jim Bainey is our host for show and tell. So, Jim, come on up. Chris, I'm going to leave my microphone for the guest, and Jim will be on the orange microphone. So if you are showing, make sure you speak into the microphones.
Okay, John, I wanted to say that one of our members that just passed away, I first met him on a habitat site, and he eventually became the director of Kansas City Habitat once they all merged together. So we're going to miss him immensely. Go, John. Here it is. Did you cut out any of that with a
Scroll saw.
scroll saw?
This is a sample of what this. Is it going? This is a sample of what scroll sawing, one type of scroll sawing. This consists of 5 layers of 1/8 inch Baltic birch plywood, and then each layer has a pattern, and you cut it out, and then you stack them, and you get some interesting things. These can range from very simple to some extremely complex designs. I call them mandalas. I don't know if that's fair or not, but that's what I call them. Any questions about
Is there a finish on that, John?
Yes, it's, what's that basic oil again? Watco, thank you. Danish oil, that's it, Danish oil.
And this is a wall hanging?
Yes.
Okay. How long did it take you to do that?
Oh, probably a half a day, 4 hours.
Got a purpose for it?
But
Where's it going?
when you start putting trim work around it, that adds a little extra time to it. But I've got some projects. I hope to bring one in that took me, I'd say if I worked an 8-hour day, 5 days a week, I had one that probably lasted 2 weeks.
Wow.
It was.
And you're bringing that next week? Next month?
I'll bring it in next month.
Okay.
Show that one.
Is it finished?
Yes.
Okay. What
Yeah.
is it? Surprise?
It's well, it's another mandala, similar to this, but not any particular design. But it's I'll bring it in and you can take a look at it. And most of these that I make, these are glued together, but those more complex ones, I stack them. And so what I'll do is I'll lay them all out on the table over there, and you can see how each one. I think it had something like 900 individual holes. Each one of these little holes, you drill a little hole in it, you run your blade through it, you cut it out, disconnect the blade, drill another little hole, and you do that. And I think this one has something like 900 holes in it.
When you what do you use to drill a hole with? Just a hand drill or a
No,
drill press?
there's a special drill bit gadget that you insert into a drill press, and then that has its own head on it, and the drill bits are extremely small. They go way below 1/132nd. They're very small and very fragile.
So if they're that small, how do you get a blade into it?
Well, the blades are very small also.
I asked for that, didn't I? Okay.
And then on like some of the bigger holes, you can probably use a 1/8 inch bit or something like that. And but when you start doing fine detail, you have to get very, very fine. Some of the blades are really
So
small.
in that process, do you drill a number of holes at a time, or do you just drill one hole, cut it, go back to the drill?
That's typically a personal preference. I like to drill 5 or 6 at a time, then cut out 5 or 6 holes. And then I walk around and bang my head into the wall a little bit. Then I go back, drill 5 more holes. I mean, but it's a great, for me, if things have been pretty dicey or difficult, I love going down into the man cave and disappearing for about 4 hours and just drilling little holes and cutting out a deal. It's the same thing as you cutting great big boards, making great big chests and tables. Mine are a little smaller.
It's not the same, John.
No, it's not.
Okay. Any questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Who's next? Wayne? Okay.
I took a class a while ago, and it was on radial matching veneer top. So I came back from that with a round tabletop that I didn't know what the heck I was going to do with. So anyway, figured just had to try and make a base and all that. So I looked around, found the base in Fine Woodworking, Tim Coleman design that he actually used on a kitchen table. So it was kind of fun, a little odd angles and some curves and that type of thing. So it was kind of fun little project. So that's it.
Can we tip this over so we can get a view of the top? So, you veneered this obviously. You just happened to run across the piece of veneer that had half of that design in?
Well, yeah, I think it's ash, and you just use mirrors to find out what it's going to look like when you do it. And so,
Okay.
Yeah, that was it.
So, a couple of questions. You've got a 3/4 inch top here.
Yeah.
And you've got veneer on top of it.
Yes.
What did you use for a substrate?
It's MDF.
5/8 MDF?
No, I think it's 3/4 MDF.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's
Nothing
awful
special.
thin veneer
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's just commercial veneer.
Okay.
So.
And you veneered the bottom as well?
Yeah.
And was that the pattern that you started out with before you
That's the
segmented?
Same. It was the same veneer. Just
Okay.
didn't do a radial match. You know how classes go. It's a weekend class, and you're
Where'd you take that?
up St. Cloud, Minnesota.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you betcha.
You bet.
Yeah.
We've done.
So it was Joe Morgan gave it in St. Cloud.
Did you go to the Sons of Norway Hall when you were up there?
Yeah, I missed it this time.
Really?
Yeah, sorry.
You should have been there. They had a door prize.
Yeah, some lutefisk.
Yeah.
So.
We're both from Minnesota, if you couldn't tell.
Okay.
Anyway, what did you use for a finish on this?
Armor seal. I figured
Okay.
it's a table and wanted something a little.
How many
little
coats
tougher.
did you put on?
I don't know. I usually do 3 to 5, depending on mood and
you
how much I
buffed it
have.
out with. You
No,
were saying,
I don't believe I wax this. So generally, if I'm going to have it as a piece of furniture, I don't wax a lot, just because I don't want to have to re-wax. So I'll just leave it. You just use a semi-gloss armor seal.
what kind of joints did you use at the base of the
It's
legs?
mortise and tenon.
And up here as well on this base?
No, that one's screwed in from the top.
Okay.
Shh.
What's the function of that penny?
That's the year it was done.
Ah.
Yeah.
You're not into writing or when
I
it
got
was
my
done?
initials there too.
Oh, okay.
I don't write neat enough to do a whole lot of writing, so.
Neither did my dad, but he didn't know how to write. And these are pins all the way through?
Yeah, it's drawboard.
Okay.
Yep.
What are you going to do with this? What's its final destination?
It's found a corner in a bedroom in the house. That's it. Kind of hides, but.
So it's an accent table for your.
Yeah. Didn't really know. It was not a planned piece, so it found a quiet little corner out of the way in the house somewhere.
Awesome.
So yep.
Very good.
But it was
Any
kind of fun.
questions? Megan.
What's that?
Okay.
I got one right here. That joint in the center where all those. What is inside of that? Is there?
It's just like a 1/2 inch piece of walnut. Started out square and just round the exposed corners.
And then that was you draw board.
Yes.
Into that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Another question is: the top of this looks pretty perfectly round. How did you accomplish that?
Did that with a router and a just
Okay.
traced it. Yep.
And a trammel tool.
Yeah, that type of thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Then the banding on it. How did you adhere that?
That's a trick. Don't look too close because you'll find some areas that might have been a little better. Just ripped narrow end grain and then wrapped it around, glued it, piece by piece,
And
all that.
how did you clamp it?
With a band clamp, and that's an area that I would want to think more on the next time I do it. So
Okay. And the black trim on the top.
Just black veneer,
Okay.
black dyed veneer. It is not ebony or anything.
Is that scratched in, Wayne, or is that done as part of laying out the whole
That was
veneer panel?
done as part of laying out the whole thing. That, the whole outside also, the focus of the class was on the center part. And the whole outside was rushed a little bit, and I got a little lucky. I almost had some of the walnut not be orientated right on the outside, but it turned out okay.
Awesome.
Yep.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you. There's the mic.
Last time I was here, I had a pheasant that was a half of a pheasant.
Yeah. Mhm.
And you
It's an
said,
urn.
you asked me, it's an urn,
Yeah.
and you asked me to bring a full pheasant, and this is a full size pheasant. This is also an urn. It's hollow. You open up the bottom, and you can laser engrave whatever statement you want about the dog that you had. You place the ashes in there, and you have it on the mantle as an urn for hunting dogs. And this is what I sell on the internet. And I've had even people put the owner of the dog in there, as well as the dog.
Any mother-in-laws?
No mother-in-laws. But anyway, you get a little bag, you put multiple dogs, you put one dog, it's enough to hold a 70-pound dog of cremains. But it's hand carved and painted in oil, and that's what it is.
Man, pheasant season's coming up. I can't wait.
I've shot a lot of them. And then this is the Gamble's quail, and this is the quail that we'll be carving in the class coming up. And when I take these when I teach these classes, I teach them by showing. So I will be starting with a Gamble's block of wood, and I will take this quail all the way to the completion. And the length of the class depends on how fast we go, but when you're done with the class, you'll have a completed bird just like that. And so I teach by doing. You just follow my lead, what I do. And that's it.
And when's that class coming up?
That is coming up the end of this month, September, the end of September 26th. It's on a Sunday.
Are there any vacancies left?
Yeah, there's 2 vacancies left, and that's it. I only take 4 people, but because it's hands-on, I'm right with them all the time, and we've got a couple of equipment that the wood carving SIG had bought a dust collector and a flexible shaft grinders and pyrography tools. So the only tool that you really need is a micromotor tool, and that's listed in of what that is.
What kind of dust collector did you get?
Well, it's a Tornado dust collector, but whenever you grind, it just takes the dust and
It
fills
works
it
well?
up. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, they're top of the line. So,
Okay.
but that's what it is.
And any questions about this? Awesome.
Okay. Thanks a bunch.
Can't wait for pheasant season to get here. I might take a shot at that pheasant if you put it in the back window of your vehicle. I'd probably miss it too. Okay, Craig? Really?
I have a box. I realize I'm in Kenney's class. We finished this box today, and I realize that there's still some things wrong with it. I realize that I still have a lot to learn about box making. But this is basswood and walnut. The outside of the basswood has been painted. The walnut lid, when it opens, it stays open like this because of a notch inside, but it's loose. And so when you lay it in there, it should just fit just like that, come open and stay. The inside has fabric glued into it, and then the bottom is plywood veneered with more basswood. And the basswood is proud, so it gives a shadow line at the bottom of the box when it sits. But that fabric is glued on to the base, to the bottom, before the bottom's installed. So there's no intricate cutting or anything like that. And I kind of picked this pattern because, even if it was crooked, you wouldn't notice. Who'd know? But I realized today, particularly trying to fit a box in a box, that square really matters. Things have to be 90 degrees, because if one box is not square, the other box is also not square. And I found that out the hard way today. There's what the inside looks like. And that's just fabric that Matt had. And he encourages you to cut the fabric right out of the middle of the bolt. So there's a joke about that from class. So anyway, that's milk paint is the finish. We put on 3 coats of milk paint. Mine still needs to be buffed a little bit, and then shellac for the walnut lid. That's it.
Questions? So this class is going on right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a 5-day class,
Mm-hmm.
and we're in the middle of box. We'll be finishing up box 2 tomorrow morning, and then we'll have Thursday and Friday to do box 3, which is a 3-compartment box.
When I first became a construction superintendent, I was working on a 55-story building in downtown Chicago, and I had the interior of the first 10 floors of this project, and I got to know the superintendent who built the building, and he made a comment to me one time. I said, I really aspire to sometime build a big multi-story building, and he said, if you can build a box, you can build one of these. I haven't gotten beyond those boxes yet.
Well, on this scale, a 32nd of an inch is a big deal.
Yeah.
So if one side is too long, you're definitely going to have problems.
Yeah. I remember going into him one time. I was laying out a floor and nothing was working, and all the casework that was going in, multi-million-dollars worth of casework, and half of it had already been done. And I'm going, whoa! I gotta go back and make some adjustments here. And I had one steel column, was 18 inches off. And I remember going to him, and I said, I got a problem. And he goes, so?
Solve it.
Yeah. Very good.
All right.
Hey,
Thank
Craig.
you.
Hey, Craig.
Yes.
The milk paint, did you mix that up the same way you do where you run it through a cheesecloth?
We not on this particular one. The green paint that we're using for our second box, we did run through cheesecloth to remove some of the chunks.
Okay.
But milk paint has to be mixed as a powder because of the milk solids that are in it. Otherwise it'll spoil just like real milk.
Did you put them in a refrigerator?
No, because it'll only stays good for about a day.
Okay.
And we had done this on the second day, so there maybe could have used some of and there's 3 coats on here and sanded in between each coat and all that. This will eventually also get a wax. It'll be burnished and buffed with wax on there.
How long does it take to dry between coats?
Golly, this was dry in about an hour.
Wow.
And then
okay.
the second coat dried even faster, and the third coat dried even faster than that.
Which brings up the point, are you doing any more finishing classes?
Yes, we're going to try to get another one set up for maybe late October, and maybe another one. I'll just keep going.
I fully encourage everybody to take that. I thought I knew something about finishing. I found out I knew a lot that I didn't know.
No, it's a fun class, pretty fast paced too, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was a good class. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. So, thanks.
Good. All right. I brought a project in. I built a deck on. I put a kitchen addition on my house, and then I built a new deck on it. And I wanted to make this railing somewhat unique, so I put a stainless steel cable system in, and I I built the posts and the top railing out of wood. I went to Metro and purchased a bunch of ash, because ash is somewhat weather resistant if you paint it well enough. The challenge of this was the posts I had to have hollow inside, so their posts are made out of 4 beveled pieces, and I splined each side. The trick that what I found out is that I couldn't glue all 4 sides up at one time because the glue was setting up too quickly, and I wanted to use waterproof glue. So what I did was I cut my bevels, I cut the splines, and I glued the bottom 2 together, but I slid the splines in the top 2 and then clamped it all up. And then in order to do that, the top 2 splines had to be just a minute smaller so I could slide them in and back. And there were a couple times I was sliding them in and I broke it because so you just go to the other end and slide it in that way, and then pull it back out, glue it up, slide them back in and clamp it up. It was a long process, but it really worked well. I put an LED light system in the bottom of the top rail. Well, there's only one rail. All around the deck. Boy, that was expensive. And turned out pretty well. And then I painted it. I used a composite on the deck floor, and I painted it the same as the color as the deck floor. So that took me a while. And then the top rail, I basically did the same thing, and I had one piece that was 16 foot long, and so I spliced it in between. But that one's been on for a while, and I've looked to see if it's expanding and contracting, and so far, so good. So it's got to go through a winter yet, so we'll see. I'm done.
You're done. All right. Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody, for their show and tell items. All right, we're going to take an intermission. Folks at home, you're going to get to watch a safety video on the Mortiser. Ooh, the people will marvel. So we're going to take a break. There's some refreshments back here. This month there is no raffle. Sorry about that. But what's that? There's free cucumbers, Matt says. Where are they? On the raffle table. There they are. All right. So we'll be back in about 7 to...
Hi, my name is Mike Jones, and welcome to another episode of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild's ongoing series of machine safety videos. Today's video will introduce you to the safety rules and requirements of the Powermatic hollow chisel mortiser. Keep in mind that, like all safety videos, this video only covers the safety concerns of this machine and is not a complete training program for the use of this equipment. When in the shop, please direct any questions about using this or other machines to the on-duty shop foreman. He or she is there to act as your main resource in helping you to keep safe and provide advice and assisting you to successfully complete your project. Always remember, the most important of safety concerns is to wear approved safety glasses with side shields at all times while in the KCWG shop. Your regular glasses are not approved for use when participating in any shop activity while you are at the guild. Hollow chisel mortisers are used to cut square or rectangular holes in wood, generally for the mortise side of a mortise and tenon joint. The hollow chisel mortiser is equipped with a square chisel with a rotating auger bit within the chisel that serves to remove large amounts of material while the chisel cuts a square or rectangular hole, leaving the square corners and smooth walls of the mortise. Hollow chisel mortisers are similar to a drill press in that the mortiser combines the square chisel with the rotating drill bit in the center. The bit inside the chisel clears out most of the material while the chisel ensures that the hole is clean, square, and smooth inside. When using the hollow chisel mortiser, one must first install the proper size chisel. The Kansas City Woodworkers Guild has a selection of mortising chisels sized from 1/4 inch to 3/4 inch. The mounting of the chisel and bit requires that you mount the chisel into the collet while inserting the bit shank into the chuck. The chuck is identical to one used in a drill press. It is best to use a piece of scrap stock to hold the chisel and bit in place while you tighten the chuck with the available chuck key. Once the bit is securely mounted in the chuck, you then loosen the collet, holding the chisel, and raise the chisel about 1/16 of an inch, and then retighten the collet screw. It is recommended that you then turn the chuck by hand one complete turn to ensure that nothing is binding. There are stop screws that allow you to set limits on the side to side and front to back travel of the bed. If you're not familiar with the setup procedure, please ask the foreman on duty to help you with this procedure. It's very important to remember to have your stock securely clamped into position before turning on the machine and cutting your mortises. When cutting through mortises, please be sure to have a piece of sacrifice material under your work so that you don't risk cutting into the machine bed. Another important thing to remember when using the hollow chisel mortiser is at the position of the waste port on the chisel. You will want to mount the chisel so that the waste port is leaving the waste behind in the previously cut hole. This helps to allow the waste material to not build up inside the chisel and generate friction heat, which will dull the chisel and the bit prematurely. Please ask the shop foreman for assistance if you're not sure how to set this up. It is also a really good idea to check the chisel and bit for sharpness before you start. A dull chisel can make things a lot more difficult and affect the quality of your mortise. Please ask the foreman to help you with sharpening the chisel if you're not familiar with how to do it. When you start the machine, be sure to never touch the chisel with the bit spinning. You should never allow your hands or fingers to be closer than 3 inches from the chisel when cutting your mortise. The auger is exposed on the side of the chisel where the waste port is located and can cause severe injury should you touch it. Remember, when cutting your mortises, the bit and chisel, ideally, should be fully engaged. Cut your first hole, then move the bed about 2/3 the size of the next hole to make the next cut. This puts less strain on the bit and eliminates the deflection of the chisel and bit and the high level of heat that can be generated by the deflection. Following this procedure will produce a cleaner cut and more professional looking results. Also, never try to hand hold the piece you're cutting. Your stock should be firmly clamped in the machine before you turn the mortiser on. Remember, the successful use of the hollow chisel mortiser is very dependent upon a good setup, especially when performing several repeat cuts on table or chair legs. When you're finished, you should take a few moments to check your work area, clean up the machine and the floor around where you've been working. This is Mike Jones. Thanks for watching.
Welcome to the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild's Woodwork podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Thomas, and joining us today is the Guild's training director, Norm Carpenter. Norm, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So let's get started here. How did you get your start in woodworking?
Well, like most of us at the Guild, my father was a woodworker, so I kind of picked up a lot of things from him. Started at age 4 or 5, hammering nails into 2x4s out on the driveway, but really didn't get a lot of support or a lot of work in woodworking until I was about sophomore in high school. I was one of those kids, there were only so many electives you could take, and wood shop was kind of out for me as an elective. I was in band, so that was kind of using up my wood shop time. But my father noticed that my high school that I was at had an evening adult program for woodworking. And so the woodworking teacher at the high school would open it up in the evenings once a week, and people could come in and pay for the class and then use the tools and make their own pieces. So he suggested that we both go on Wednesday nights to the program. And so that's what we did, and I did that for 2 years with him, and it was a great experience. I learned from him, the teacher, and a lot of the older guys that were in the class teaching me how to do woodworking. It was awesome.
Sounds great. So how did you come to the Guild?
So I was kind of recruited to the Guild, not by any of the members, but we lived in Spokane at the time, and my daughter and her husband were out here in Kansas City, and we were kind of alone. Both of our kids moved east, so we wanted to, we were talking about maybe moving and getting closer, and we couldn't decide whether to move closer to my son or closer to my daughter, and so she was talking about this great woodworking guild that Kansas City had as a benefit for moving to Kansas City and choosing that as a location.
We'll have to be sure and thank her for that. You're not the only crafts person in your family. Tell us about your wife's work and how you incorporate your woodworking into it.
Sure. My wife has been an artist for as long as I've known her. She has been primarily doing watercolor pictures, paintings, and so I would help her and support her that way by building the frames that she would house her paintings in. At the same time, once we moved to Kansas City, she picked up the media in glass. So she did both stained glass and fused glass, and I would do some of the bases and the support stands for those pieces as well.
Cool. Tell us how you got into teaching here at the Guild. Was there an influence?
Absolutely there was, and I got into teaching by taking a class. I took a class here with my daughter. I think it might have been the Shaker.
There we go. All righty, we're back. Those of you at home who are watching Norm on the podcast, the Woodworks podcast, you can always catch that online. We are going to get going on our presentation tonight. Matt Kenney is the owner of MEK Woodworks in Connecticut. Right? Connecticut. Right, there you go. He has a huge following on Instagram, and I see all these wonderful boxes and pictures of robots. I think he's going to talk about those as well. So if you haven't followed Matt on Instagram, do that, and you'll be rewarded with many great images of fine woodworking. So Matt Kenney, thank you very much. Appreciate your being here at the Guild.
Talking into a microphone. I have a loud voice from when I used to teach university, but maybe it's not loud enough for the people listening through YouTube because they're far away, right? So So yeah, I've been having a great time. Tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about the things that I make and why I make them. We're having a little bit of a, because I'm stupid and thought that my device worked off one adapter, but it doesn't. It works off a different adapter. All right, so there we go. All right, now I can see that. So now I'm going to start talking why I make making doing things for wood. My dad, he was a residential and commercial contractor in Florida where I grew up, and so I grew up working on things around the house, helping my dad build sheds and boardwalks. And then when I was older, as a teenager, my brother and I would build, well, when we were kids, we would build tree forts, and as teenagers, we built skateboarding ramps, so like half pipes and street ramps. And I can see by the looks on your faces, skateboards are these boards that have wheels on the bottom, and those dastardly kids ride them around the neighborhood. And I was one of them. All right. But then I didn't really build anything again until I was in my late 20s, and I built a gardening box as a gift one year for Christmas, and that got me hooked, and I started to make things on my own. I made a crib for my first child, my daughter Grace. And then while I was teaching, I had a student that took 2 classes, and she said, you know, Dr. Kenney, I noticed you talk about woodworking a lot, something you like to do. I'm like, yeah, it is. Her dad's a professional furniture maker. She invited me to meet him. I ended up spending about 2.5 years in Joe Mazurk's shop in Camden, South Carolina, and he taught me to make furniture. In 2008, I was looking for jobs, like a tenure track job at a university, and I also looked for jobs outside of academia, and the only job I applied for was a job at Fine Woodworking magazine. And I thought, there's no way they're even going to look at my resume because I didn't have any of the requirements they were looking for. But they called me. I was like, all right, that means I'm going to get the job. I mean, really, they're going to call me. So I ended up working at Fine Woodworking for 10.5 years. I left there in 2018, and I started to teach more. By that time, I'd written my first book. Since then, I've written 2 more books, and I travel around the United States teaching. That's what brings me here. And before COVID, I would travel overseas and teach as well. So the last 3 years of my life have been pretty exciting and pretty fulfilling and very happy. All right, now I'm going to tell you about what I make and why I make it. So is that showing up somewhere? There it is. Okay, I see a nice piece of wood on that TV screen. All right, let's start with what I think about when I'm designing. Because I do design everything that I make, and I've always been interested in that. Just by nature, that's what I'm like. I was never interested in making reproduction furniture. So doesn't mean I'm not influenced by folks that came before me. It's just that I like to design and make my own furniture. So when I'm designing, I tend to think about 3 things. One is that I strip away all ornamentation, and that's something that I get from the Shakers, who are a big influence on my work. I've always loved Shaker furniture. I even find some parts of the Shaker lifestyle appealing. There are certain parts of it that I could never live without, accept. But it is still the sense of design and the things that the principles that guided their design I've always found appealing. And one of those is the way that they strip away ornamentation and focus on simplicity. what I try to do, and I'm not saying that I'm successful, but what I try to do is to make things that are beautiful using as few elements as I can. And I try to focus on 3 elements, and the ones that I focus on the most are proportions, patterns, and color. And so I'm going to show you some of my work and talk about how proportion, pattern, and color show up in them. And then after that, I'll talk a little bit about how I design, like the mechanics of designing for me. And I'll talk a little bit about where my sense of aesthetics comes from, at least where I think it comes from. And then lastly, I'll talk a little bit about why I make furniture, which I think is an important question. And I think if you can answer that question clearly, then the furniture you make will be more beautiful and more meaningful and better made. But we'll get there eventually, in about 2 or 3 hours. I haven't had that much to drink tonight. So let's start with these boxes. These round boxes are my take on the shaker oval box. I always sort of wanted to make a shaker oval box, but I am by nature a contrarian. And so I didn't want to make an oval box because everyone else makes oval boxes. So for a while I thought about, well, what can I do? What can I do? I'd seen some round shaker boxes made the same way the shakers make oval boxes. And I was like, well, a round box would be cool, but I can't make it that way. So I got to make it a different way. And I really wasn't sure what to do until after several trips to Hancock Shaker Village in western Massachusetts, where the shakers built a beautiful round stone barn. And on top of the barn is a nice roof, and then there's a cupola on top of the round roof. And so I thought to myself, I should make a simplified version of the round barn as a box. And so what I did was turn wood, make a lid, and put a pull on it. And so it has the simple structure of the round barn at Hancock Shaker Village. It's clean, clean lines. There's not too much ornamentation, which is very much in keeping with the shakers. And then there's milk paint. And the shakers used a lot of milk paint, both in their furniture and also in their dwelling houses. And they used really bright colors as well. So it was around this time that I began to seriously use milk paint in my work, both as the primary part of it, like the box that Craig showed earlier, but also as an accent, as in some of these round boxes, just the lid is painted. So I began combining milk paint with natural wood in my work, and the boxes, I think, the round boxes illustrate really well the things that I focus on, which are good proportions and color. There's not so much pattern there, unless you count the shape of the pull, which, interestingly enough, the shape of the pull I came to because that's the shape of my forefinger and thumb when they come together to hold a pull. So I just kept turning the pull until it was comfortable to hold, and then that's where I stopped. But the shakers, in their work, they emphasize good proportions. They emphasize geometry, so they use doors and drawers to create patterns on the front of work. They also emphasize that they use asymmetry really well. They don't always use it, but they do use it really well. And asymmetry is something that I use in my work as well. So that's the first bit of something I've made. Here is a cabinet or box, if I'm going to be consistent, that I made in 2016 while I was attempting to make 52 boxes during the course of 52 weeks. This was the 45th box, I believe, that I made during that time. And it is is a tea cabinet that is about 19 inches long and maybe, I don't remember how tall it is, but it's less than 19 inches. So it sits on a countertop, and it's got 3 drawers and a door. And in this piece, you can see that I'm using the drawers and the door to create, in a sense, a pattern or a geometric array of shapes. But I'm also using the cabinet itself and the stand to sort of be part of that pattern. So it's a series of rectangles, and even the negative space between the base and the case itself are rectangles. So it's the use of rectangles in different sizes to create a type of pattern or array. And there's also just an emphasis on the proportions of the cabinet, so its length and its height, as well as the proportions of the various drawers individually, but also in relation to one another, and the shape and size of the door, as well as the Kumiko in the door. This was the first time I ever used Kumiko in something that I had made. The Kumiko is the lattice work in the door. So there also the size of the rectangles, the arrangement of the rectangles, its proportion, and its pattern. I'm also here using color quite a bit to bring out or emphasize the beauty of the piece. So not only do you have the color of the cherry, you have the color of the basswood door, the basswood pulls. There is cocobolo that borders or is in between the door frame and the Kumiko, and then the brown thread wrapped around the pulls. All of those colors work together to complement one another, and also they add some emphasis or help bring out the shapes of the parts and the way that they are arranged together. And the green fabric behind the Kumiko, again, is a bit of color thrown in to brighten up the piece a little bit and offer some unexpected beauty. Something I use a lot in my work, as you can see in Craig's box earlier, is fabric. So I bring color into my work both through milk paint, but also through fabric, and in this case, thread as well, which is wrapped around the pulls. I'm really fascinated by the way that natural wood colors, which are always generally pretty earthy and warm, although not all woods are that way. Maple is pretty cold, to me anyways. It's sort of a cold color. But I'm fascinated by the way that those natural colors can harmonize with things like reds and blues and greens. It's pretty interesting to me. It's also kind of, I got there because, as I said, I'm a natural born contrarian, and when I started to make things in around 2000, I'd go to the library in Columbia, South Carolina, and I would check out books, and everything I saw made in those books have what is sometimes called a reverence for wood, in which really people emphasize, look at this piece of wood. Look how amazing this piece of wood is. And I certainly love wood. I mean, it's amazing. I love to work with wood. But I also naturally fought against that because I think there's more to beauty than just saying, look how spectacular this piece of bird's eye maple is. There's more to good design than having, a wildly figured piece of African mahogany, right? So I wanted to move away from that, and in moving away from that, I had to find other things that I could call on to try to create beautiful things, and one of them was color, and eventually that led me to milk paint and fabric. So here's another tea cabinet that I made during the 52 boxes project. This was box 51, and I actually did make all 52. So I'm not gonna show you box 52, but I'm gonna leave you hanging. So again, this is cherry and basswood and thread and green fabric, and here I'm not only using, I took what normally might just be a single case piece, I broke it up into 3 separate pieces. There's the plinth, there's the lower box that has the 2 drawers in it, and then the upper box that has 1 drawer in it. So by breaking apart what would have been often a single carcass or case, I'm able to create shapes that I can then arrange in a pattern that is, at least to me, pleasing. But it's not just those 3, in a sense, positive spaces. There's also the negative space to the side where the teacup sits. And by using that negative space, you can emphasize the positive space of the actual case and further enhance the pattern. And there's also color there and pattern in the Kumiko. There's color in the thread and also texture in the thread. But so I made that piece during the 52 Boxes project. And later, when I talk about why I make things, I might quickly swipe back to this one to talk about why there's a place for a teapot there. We'll see if there's room for that. Here's another of the 52 boxes. This is the 3rd box we're going to make this week in the class I'm teaching here in Kansas City. This box was inspired by something I've always been fascinated by, is bento boxes, which are used, they're kind of like, sometimes they can be like trays that are used in Japanese restaurants to serve a meal on, and it's broken up into several small compartments that are never the same size or the same shape, and different parts of the meal are put into each compartment. And I've always been fascinated by the little compartments and the arrangement of those compartments to create patterns. And so I started to think about boxes that had multiple compartments in them. And this was not the first box I made like that, but it was an early iteration of that idea, where I took a square box, and instead of just having a single lid on it, I broke it up into 3 smaller compartments and put a lid on each compartment to create shapes and patterns from those shapes. There's also here the use of the vertical grain Douglas fir box lids to emphasize the pattern itself, and then the Cocobolo pulls do that as well. In this particular box, I introduced a new element, the drilled out sort of shallow mortise beneath the pulls that are then painted with milk paint to introduce another shape, another pattern that also in a way complements, emphasizes the overall structure of the box. And I really like the use of fabric in boxes, because when you open it up, you get a pleasant surprise. There's something colorful, there's something pretty. It's not just a shellacked cherry bottom. There's something else that's visually interesting. So again, this is another. So this was one of the 52 boxes, and it does again show my what I'm focused on when I'm designing. Something else that I make a lot of, which also I probably make a lot of, because it allows me to give expression to these sort of obsessions that I have with pattern and color and simple lines, and proportions, is Kumiko. And Kumiko is a Japanese art form that's been around for 1,400 years or more. And it's a lattice work. So it's a framework, or like a lattice, that then you cut small pieces that fit together inside the squares of the lattice work to create patterns. And those are all just friction fit in. There's no glue involved. Some frames are made up of small squares, like this one. Sometimes the frame is based on a triangle, so it's a hexagonal basis for the pattern. And sometimes it's like a diamond-based frame. My second book, The Art of Kumiko, is all frames that are based on the square. So this pattern here is called the Asanoha, and it's the most prevalent pattern in Kumiko. It's also a pattern that shows up throughout Japanese culture. It signifies like strong development and strong growth, and so it shows up like on babies' clothing and babies' bed sheets. It's on the jersey of at least their men's national football team, their soccer team, and it just shows up throughout Japanese culture on fabrics and all kinds of places, you know, in plates and dinnerware, things like that. What interests me about it is that on the one hand you have these very simple, clean lines, and the way that they can fit together to create an apparently complex pattern really fascinates me. And that pattern would be just a single Asanoha, but then you can take the Asanoha and repeat it to create a larger pattern, and it creates something that appears to be very complex out of something that's actually quite simple. In that panel we're looking at here, which is 9 individual Asanoha, each Asanoha is made up of 4 quadrants, and in each quadrant there's only 3 different pieces. So this entire panel is just made up by repeating 3 different pieces that lock together in a particular way. And so that is something that I find interesting, I find compelling, and it's taking something very simple and making something beautiful out of it. And that challenge is a challenge that I never grow tired of. Here's another Kumiko panel I made. It has 3 Asanoha in the middle, and around that is a series of what is essentially a hashtag, you know, the ubiquitous hashtag now, that's been cut so it can spin to 45 degrees and then put into the squares. Again, it's something that looks really complex, but when you know that it's made from just a few simple pieces that are repeated over and over again, it becomes, I think, more fascinating. That you can take something so simple and so uncomplicated and make something that appears to be very complex and beautiful. So, another Kumiko panel, and then I'll show you, I think this is the last one. What I really like about the Asanoha is that you can vary it in size and within a single panel and create something that is more striking than if it was all the same size. So in a way, with really just 3 pieces, varying its size, varying how you group it, whether there's spaces between the individual Asanoha or if you cluster them all together, you're able to create just an amazing array or range of patterns and panels that all appear to be different and unique, but really they're all just made from 3 simple pieces that are repeated over and over again, maybe in different sizes and in different arrangements. So I like the challenge of that. So now I'll talk to you a little bit about how I design. And how I design is really rooted in what I learned in high school. In high school, I wanted to be an architect. So I decided they offered mechanical drafting. My high school was 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So in 10th grade, I took mechanical drafting. And then in 11th grade, I took another mechanical drafting class. And then there were maybe 6 of us that had taken it 2 years in a row. We were all in the same grade. And we begged and pleaded with the instructor to do an architectural drafting class for the 6 of us in our senior year. And he did. And so my senior year, I did architectural drafting. Now, I know that I look very young and vivacious and full of life. But when I learned to draft, we did it with pencils and T-squares. And someone brought up the bane of my high school this week, repeatograph pens, which are just absolutely nightmares, just for how much you have to clean them and how they can bleed and ruin your perfect drawing at the last moment. So so I took 3 years of drafting. Oddly enough, directly across the hall from that was the shop class. And at the time, I was like, there is no way I am taking shop class. So, but now I spend most of my time in a shop, and I teach shop class all the time. So, but drafting was, although we did definitely, once we were doing architectural work, we were doing perspective drawings. But for the most part, it was two-dimensional drawings. And a lot of the way that I think about design is always in 2 dimensions. So what I think about is that I want my work to make sort of a bold graphic statement. Because that's what I think about when I think about drafting. There's like these very simple arrangement of lines that can often be very powerful and make a really strong statement. That's especially true of architectural, drawings. They're just lines put together in a way that are very strong and can evoke a lot of emotion. And that's how architects sell their clients on something, just off a drawing. And so they have a lot of power. This drawing that you see here, you might think it's a very simplified and rudimentary version of the first tea cabinet I showed you, but it's actually an accurate representation of that box. That's really all there is to it, are the lines that you see there. And so when I'm designing, I think about what can I say with as few lines as possible? And how can I use the structure of the piece that I'm making to create a pattern, to create something that's bold and that says something that evokes a feeling in the people that own it or people that see it. But I always design in 2 dimensions first. And I start with this face that's seen the most. So in that tea cabinet, you're going to see the front of it because it's going to be sitting on a counter or on a credenza or on a hunt board in the dining room. And so when you walk into the dining room, the first thing that you're going to see, the thing that you're pretty much always going to see, is the front of the tea cabinet. So that's what I think about first when I'm designing. If it's a box that sits on top of a table, I think about the top of the box. And that's what I work on first. And the way that I do that is I have sketchbooks, and I draw just one thing. And then I draw another thing that's a lot like it, but it's just a little bit different. And then I draw a third thing that's just a little bit different than the first thing. I don't consider myself a creative person or an artistic person. And I never knew, I always thought that creative people that did beautiful drawings and paintings, that stuff just came out of nowhere, like magic. And then when I was at Fine Woodworking, I was working with a furniture maker named Hank Gilpin in Rhode Island. And Hank is just a perfect designer, just beautiful furniture all the time. And he was showing me some of his sketchbooks, and he had drawn ingrain that he wanted to use in like 100 different orientations and 100 different ways that ingrain could be cut. And I was like, how did you come up with all of that? And he said basically, well, I had this piece of ingrain and I drew it. And then I thought, well, what's one thing that I could change about it? And something clicked in my head, and I was like, oh, that's all it is to be creative. It's just to change one thing. And so now when I design, I start with something that is simple for me to conceive of, and then I change one thing about it. Then I take that second thing, and I change one thing about it. And then before you know it, I have 30 or 40 or 50 variations on this one piece of furniture. And so I'll do that in my sketchbook now and just draw and draw and draw and draw. And I will pick out maybe 5 or 6 of them, and I'll draw those more carefully. And when I do that, I focus really on trying to get the proportions of the various parts and the overall proportions right, something that's pleasing to me. And I'll also make notes to myself about what type of joinery I might use, or what type of grain I'm going to use, or if there's going to be fabric or milk paint. I'll jot down little notes to myself about that. And after I've drawn those 5 or 6 more carefully, I will pick maybe 2 or 3 and draw those larger and draw those more carefully in relation to proportions. Always trying to dial in the proportions. And after I have picked the one that I want to make, I'll get out some graph paper and I'll draw that more carefully with the proportions in mind. And at this stage, I'm not worried about dimensions, I'm just worried about proportions. So this cabinet might be 10 boxes wide by 20 boxes tall. I don't know how much one box is. It might be an inch, it might be an inch and a half, it might be 2 inches. But I'm trying just to nail in the proportions overall and of the various components of the piece. And as you can see here, I also make lots of notes to myself about joinery and other things. I don't ever, from here, I would maybe figure out what the dimensions are going to be and then write those dimensions down. But I do not do full-on shop drawings like I should be doing since I have a background in drafting. And I don't do things like draw out joinery. I don't need to draw out a dovetail. I know how to make a dovetail. I know how to lay out a dovetail, so I don't spend time drawing that out. I just write down the things that are important for me in terms of the design and the overall proportions. And actually, so the cabinet that you see there became this cabinet, which is made from quarter sawn northern red oak, which is very different from southern red oak, which is that putrid pink stuff that you see everywhere. Northern red oak is brownish, and it's really pretty. So not to really, say that red oak is horrible, in case you made something out of it, but it's horrible. So that became this piece. And the other thing that I would say about being creative at this stage is, that just change one thing at a time. And in terms of drawing, I am not artistic, so I don't have natural abilities for drawing or painting or anything. But what I have found, and I'm sure that any art teacher would tell you this, is that drawing, let's say, is just like any other skill. For example, cutting dovetails. If you want to get good at cutting dovetails, what do? You go out and cut dovetails. So if you draw every day or quite a bit, you get better at drawing. And it just happens. So I'm not a natural born artist, but and maybe later at the end of this, if there's time, I'll show you, I started to draw a lot. And it wasn't furniture. It was something else. And because I was drawing all the time, I got better at drawing. And if you would like to see afterwards, I have one of my furniture sketchbooks with me. And I can show you, I was working with someone trying to help them become a better designer. I don't know why they asked me, but I was like, you're going to pay me? Sure, I'll do it. I started with a very simple, standard bedside table. And by the time I was done, I had drawn, I think, 75 different bedside tables. And if you want to come up and see sort of the progression of that, I can show you that in more detail. I'll talk a little bit about how I sort of wound up where I am in terms of what I design. I will start with this qualifier. I always feel a little awkward talking about this kind of stuff because I think it gives the impression that I believe that I'm somehow this amazing, great designer, and I don't. I've worked with people who are amazing and fantastic designers like Michael Fortune and Garrett Hack and Hank Gilpin, and I'm not in their league. But I have a background in philosophy. And that's what I taught in college. I was a college philosophy professor. And that means that I think way too much about stuff. So I have designed and made a lot of furniture, and I've thought about what it is that I think about when I design. And I don't mean to tell you that this is the only way to design or it's the best way to design or anything. It's what I do. So I do think, if I can say this without sounding arrogant or full of myself, that I've gotten to a point where the things that I make are recognizably mine. That if you've seen some of my work, and then some of the later date you see something I've made, you would go, that's something that Matt made. So I was asked a lot about, how did I do that? How do you make stuff that is uniquely yours? And I didn't at first have an answer to that because I didn't really know. So I started to think about how I got there. What is it about the things that I make that makes them mine? How's my work different than, say, Mike Pekovich's work or Hank Gilpin's work or Michael Fortune's work? And I think what I realized is that what shows up in my work and can be readily identified as mine is a reflection or an expression of the things that I find interesting in the world when I look at it. So now when people ask me that question, if I can't beat them off and just not answer it, what I say is that you need to think about the way that you look at the world and what you find fascinating in the world, and try to let that come into what you make in the shop. So, let the way you see the world inform what you design and what you make. And so the things that sort of I look at in the world and what fascinates me, have always been interested with light and shadow and the way that they are combined to create dimensionality and to create texture and to create interest. And one of the things that I do when I'm not in the shop is I'm a very avid photographer. It was part of my job at Fine Woodworking to be a photographer, and I still go around and take photographs of things. And I love to shoot in black and white, because in black and white, you're really using light to create dimensionality, to create a sense of life, and to create visual interest. And that's something that shows up in my work. I'm interested in the way that I can use the pieces and parts of furniture to create sort of shadow and light and dimensionality. And so I realized that the things that in that regard, what I find interesting in the world was starting to show up in my work. Other things that I find interesting in the world are like patterns. When I'm sitting in a restaurant and there's a big transom window that's just a bunch of divided light, what I'm looking at is the pattern that those different squares of panes make. Or I'm looking at the pattern that the light creates on the wall over there as the sun moves across the sky, and how that pattern changes. So those are that's something that I find interesting in the world, and it's something that sort of found its way into my work. Something else that shows up in my work is an interesting color. And when I'm looking at the world, I'm also really fascinated by color. So this photograph, which I took while I was driving home from work one day to a house I was living in out in the country outside of the town I live in. This is a road that bisects a farm. I stopped because, having grown up in Florida, I love thunderstorms. And to me, one of the most amazing colors in the world is the color of a thunderstorm. You think, it's not a uniform color. There's so much variation and beauty in those deep blues and purples. And in this particular moment, which was early spring, against that deep blue and purple of the thunderstorm, you have all the different vibrant greens of spring. And you also have this beautiful gray of the worn out road crossing in front of them. And when I saw this, what I found fascinating was not tree, thunderstorm, road, but green, blues, and grays all coming together to create sort of an intermingling of colors that's beautiful. The bonus is that it's nature, because nature is almost always beautiful. I guess you could even say that some of the things that are quote-unquote ugly are also beautiful, like a pack of hyenas, chasing down its prey. But so when I'm looking out in the world, I also am fascinated with color, and so I realized that fascination with color in the world showed up in the things that I make. And this is another spot near the house I was living in at the same time. This was in winter. And winters in Connecticut, the colors can be amazing. There's beautiful browns and tans, and then often there's snow on the ground, and you have the amazing, just as varied and subtle as the blues are in a thunderstorm, the whites and grays of a overcast sky in winter in New England can be just as breathtaking. So this is a spot I photographed about once a week over the course of a year. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but I wanted to see the ways it changed through the course of a year. So I'm almost done, I promise. There's only a few people that are asleep. Now, when I was a professor and someone fell asleep, I would take one of the textbooks and slam it down on the desk next to them, but not anymore. Sometimes I would just start saying their name quietly over and over and over until they woke up, but I don't do that anymore. All right, so a little bit about why I make furniture. One of the reasons I did that book, or the project 52 Boxes, 52 Weeks, is because I had a boss at Fine Woodworking, who shall remain nameless, who every time I made a box would make two jokes. One was that, why do you make boxes? They don't have any use. They're stupid. Which really isn't a joke at all. It's just someone being a jerk. And then he would say, well, that's where you put your pot. So, that was his, what he said every time I made a box. And, I knew that he was wrong on both counts, because A, I don't smoke pot, so clearly I'm not putting pot in boxes. But two, he was missing something by only judging the box by function. And I knew that because I had studied philosophy. And I had read Aristotle. And Aristotle says there's 4 ways that you can explain what something is. He says you can talk about the material that it's made from. You can talk about what made it. You can talk about, in a sense, what it is, what its essence is. And then you can also talk about what it's, in the Greek, the word is telos, what its purpose or end is. And what my boss was always focused on is what a thing did. And he never focused on what its purpose was. And the purpose of something is not the same as its function or its utility. And then when I realized that, besides being smug for a week, no, I wasn't, I realized I love making boxes because boxes are beautiful. And there's something beyond their utility that's captivating. And so I quadrupled down and made 52 boxes in the course of a year. That's one of the reasons I did that. So why I make furniture, and I know that not everyone's going to agree with this, and I'm fine. It's perfectly within your rights to be wrong. But why I make furniture is because I love to make things that are functional. Don't get me wrong. And in order to be genuinely beautiful, a piece of furniture must be functional. But there's something over and beyond its function that is interesting. And it's why we keep furniture around, the stuff that we keep around and give to our children, and then they give to their children. It's not because it's functional. There's something else there. That's why we keep it. And that's why I make furniture. That's what I'm interested in. So, I am not just going to repeat what that says, but, maybe I will. An object's function is not identical to the purpose, because the meaning it has in our lives is not determined by what it does, right? So I'm interested in the meaning that furniture has in our lives, and I suspect that all of you are as well. You're not just interested in the function. So what am I talking about meaning? Well, if you think about furniture, every piece of furniture that you make has a story. The story might begin at the drawing table, and then the next chapter's at the lumberyard, and then it's at the joiner and the planer, and then it's when you're cutting joinery. Now, it's probably your first instinct to think that that story ends when you take it out of the shop and give it to a client or put it in your house. But that's not the case. In fact, the story doesn't really begin until it's out of your shop. You're writing the epilogue. Not the epilogue, the prologue. Excuse me, I know Greek, I should know better. It's the prologue that you're writing in your shop. And the real story begins when it's put into your house or someone else's house. That's when you begin to interact with it on a daily basis, let's say if it's a dining table or it's a chest of drawers. And it begins to take on meaning and value to you. If it's a dining table, it's because that's where little Gracie jammed a fork into it, and you remember that time. Or if it's a chest of drawers, it's because every day you're opening it and you're pulling out clothing. And it becomes part of your world, you know? Not your world as a whole, but this very intimate sense of world where you have your dresser and your family is there, and it's your closed, intimate life in the home. And that's like sort of a concept from another philosopher named Martin Heidegger, who I will not go into, but he had this concept that, like, well, in your shop, you have a world in your shop, and you know where everything is in that world. That's why you can reach over here and grab the marking gauge, right? So there is a prescribed world in your shop, and there's a world like that in your house. And your furniture is in that world, and it begins to take on meaning. And the more you interact with it, and the more that it becomes part of your life, the more meaningful and valuable it is to you. And that's the purpose of furniture, is to have that place in your life and to be something beautiful in your life. And beauty doesn't mean physical beauty, but also emotional beauty and the beauty of meaning in your life. And so when I'm making furniture and designing furniture, I'm not just thinking about its utility or its function, I'm also thinking about how I can make it something that can fit into your home or my home and become something that is part of the larger context of my life, and so takes on meaning. And so this photograph here is in the bedroom that I currently have in the house that I own, and you really actually, well, you can see two things that I made. There's the shaker cupboard that's barely there, and then there's the set of boxes on top of that. But the shaker cupboard, which is one of the favorite pieces I've ever made, I've made two versions of it. This one's in Eastern White Pine, and I love this one. And part of the reason I love it is that it sits in my bedroom. I see it every day, and on top of it, there's four very meaningful things to me. There's that set of boxes, which is on the cover of my book, and so I'll never sell that set of boxes unless you have $2,000 tonight, in which case I'll sell it. But it's very meaningful to me because it's on the cover of my first book. Then there's that small carved figurine, which my mom gave to me when I was married. She gave it to me and my family. My mom passed away in 2015, so that has value to me. There's a bowl that was made by a ceramicist that I know personally and who I really like her work. And then there's a photograph taken by the daughter of Joe Mazurek, who taught me to make furniture. She's a professional travel photographer, and I really admire her work. So that shaker cupboard has become part of this little area in my room that has a great deal of value and meaning to me. Now, I keep furniture, I keep clothing in it, but that's not why I really like it. What I really like about it is it's now become woven into the fabric of my life, and it's sitting there and with those other pieces, it's telling a story about me and telling a story about what I find important and about the way that I live. So that's ultimately what I'm thinking about when I'm making furniture, and what I hope that my furniture becomes in someone else's home or a box. And there's just a few other photographs that sort of illustrate what I'm talking about. That wall cabinet that I showed you earlier eventually ended up in a client's home so that she could display pottery. This is not the pottery, that's my pottery. But it becomes something valuable to her, not because it's just something, a wall cabinet to store things in, but because of what it stores and the way that it allows her to highlight different pieces of pottery that she owns. And she does rotate things out of it and put new pieces in it. So it becomes a way for her to cherish and value the pottery that she's collected. And, you know, a tea box or a tea cabinet, sure, it stores tea packets, but it's also the role that it plays in daily tea when you have it. You know, it becomes a part of that ritual that you go through every day drinking tea. A ritual that I really don't know anything about because I don't drink tea or coffee. But when I worked at the magazine, we had tea time every day. So I got to see all my coworkers, and we had this ritual that was bigger than tea, right? It was about us coming together and sharing 15 minutes of silliness. And then there's a picture of Kumiko there, but I don't remember why that's there. And then this is maybe the best illustration of it that I can show you. This is what I see every morning when I wake up. It's directly across the foot of my bed. I made the wall cabinet many, many, many years ago when I lived in a different house. I hung it in the kitchen. It was great. My mom died. I got divorced. I bought a new house. I got laid off from the magazine. And I hung that cabinet up. And the next morning I woke up and I said, that's where that cabinet was meant to be the entire time. And in a way, everything that I had been through in the previous years, kind of everything fell together. And I realized that I was finally where I was supposed to be. And this cabinet hangs there, and it's next to a Ansel Adams photograph that I really like and that I bought on a trip to San Diego. And it has some teacups and a teapot that I really admire. But it's this small little, almost a reliquary of items, you know, reliquary for items that mean something to me. But the location of that piece in this room, at the time that I figured out that's where it was meant to be, that's what that piece of furniture is to me. It's not just something to store things in. And I think that the best pieces of furniture that we own, that's what they become. They become like this wall cabinet in my room. It signifies something much greater and something much more important than utility and function. And that's why I make furniture. That's what inspires me to design and to make things. It's not so that there's somewhere for you to put your socks. Because you can go to IKEA and get that, right? I want to make something that is where you can store your socks and your underwear, but also is something beautiful, something inspirational, something that brings joy and meaning to your life. And I'm sure, I think that everyone here would, to some degree, say the same thing. Now, I know that's a lot of emotion for someone to say in public, at least for some people, not for me, but, it's, I think that's why we make furniture. And when I'm not making furniture, that's another piece I made with a story that I could tell you, but we're probably running long on time, so I'll skip it. Someone did mention earlier, if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, you can check me out on Instagram, MEK Woodworks, or you can look at my website, mekwoodworks.com. That would also be a wonderful place to go and buy my books. Because I promise you, whatever money I make off them is not going to a rocket ship. All right? So when I'm not making furniture, one of the things I do, and I mentioned this earlier, how I got good at drawing was not drawing furniture, but drawing robots. And I started drawing them for my daughter, when she first went to school. I would draw them on the napkins and put them in her brown bag. But now I draw a lot of robots, and they all express my particular sense of humor and outlook on life. But these are some of the early ones I drew, and they've gotten more developed in a sense. The other thing that I do when I'm not in the shop, my first job ever was at a Chicago pizzeria in Jacksonville, Florida. It was owned by two brothers from Chicago. It was called The Loop, and started out as a busboy. Then I became a prep cook, where I learned how to make pizza dough, and then I became a pizza cook, and I could cook 40, 50 pizzas at a time. So I got pretty good at it. And so since about the time I was 17, I've been making dough. And so I spend a lot of time now making bread. I really like to make bread. Maybe it's because woodworking is no longer my hobby. I needed another hobby. So now sort of bread making is a hobby for me, like drawing robots is a hobby for me. But I do think it's important that if you want to be creative, say, in woodworking, that you're going to get stuck at times. So you have to find some other way to be creative. And for me, that's drawing robots and making bread. And I sort of learned that, or realized that that was true, from an amazing furniture maker named Judson Beaumont. He was a Canadian, lived in Vancouver, and if you're interested in his work, you should look up Straight Line Designs. He did absolutely amazing, creative furniture. And he told me that, and he showed me all his sketchbooks. He said, when I get stuck, I draw really elaborate birdhouses and teardrop trailers for dogs. And later, they started to make these things. Now, unfortunately, Judd passed away in 2020 at a young age for a person. But his work is absolutely amazing. And he was right. When you get stuck doing one thing, go do something else that's also creative. And soon enough, you'll be unstuck creatively. So in some way, there's no such thing as writer's block. You know, because if you get writer's block, just go make a pizza. And you'll get unstuck soon enough. I've spoken more than long enough. I appreciate you hanging around to listen to me. I can hang out for a little bit and answer questions. But if you just want to go home, I would understand that too, because it is kind of late. So anyways, thanks.
Drink coffee or tea, but thank you very much for coming.
No problem. Thank you.
You get one of these by speaking here at the Guild.
This is actually the size of one of my Scotch glasses. So.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Now I might be on. Okay. Thank you for watching us at home. Everyone here in the studio audience, drive safe. We'll see you next month. Remember, the third Wednesday of the month is the next Guild meeting. We hope to see you then. Take care.